Hello and welcome to Precontation Points Video Snark. I read books and talk about what went wrong. I'm continuing my read-through of Alienated by Melissa Landers. Not the first video, go check out the others. Links are posted below. Chapter 19. Mr. Manuel absently dealt study packets to the class, busy work to keep them occupied while he focused on his only love these days, Elix. This doesn't have to do with the story, but I needed to say that I've been in that class before. Not necessarily the teacher who was obsessed with one student exactly, but my sophomore year English teacher was focused on getting some kind of specialized degree to the point where he literally neglected his teaching duties. At the time, I didn't mind all the busy work that we had to do, but in the long run, the teacher failing to actually teach us a single thing that year obviously impacted the rest of my high school career and even into college. Anyway, the teacher asks Elix about the main differences on his planet and Earth. Elix replies by saying that everybody on his planet works to serve the greater good. On Earth, it's pretty much every man for himself. Kara naturally doesn't like that. But the teacher presses on and asks why they punish people if there's so much obedience. Elix says that they haven't had an execution in 200 years, but then lists off reasons why people would be executed. Unauthorized breeding, assault, theft, and anything that, and I quote, goes against the way, which from my perspective is legally vague and is probably abused whenever the council doesn't like somebody's actions. But maybe that's simply me. Elix says that it's impossible to lie during silent speech and poignantly tells Kara that there's no right to privacy on his planet when she asks. Despite him having literally said that there hasn't been an execution in 200 years, Elix starts to defend their reasons for wanting to be rid of such unpleasant people. And it's not so much that I disagree with him because I think that imprisonment is barbaric and does little actual good, but the thing that I was going to say about what Alex said would turn his entire thing way too political, so I'm going to move on. He then explains a bit about the way, which is their body of government. It's not a democracy and is chosen based off of those childhood assessments Elix told Kara about in an earlier chapter. They're groomed into the position and then they take office after their weird alien bar mitzvah. Then somebody else is selected from the children. Kara is naturally floored at the idea that this is how their government is run. Elix points out about how corrupt that politicians usually are, which also not gonna go there. Moving on. However, this quickly leads into a weird argument between him and Kara about freedom, as he quickly points out that people on Earth could choose to do anything that they want to, and some of those choose to protest his presence on Earth and write slurs on the Sweeney's lawn. Kara points out that people aren't free from the law, but Elix says that lax punishments aren't exactly good enough deterrents, obviously. And I'd like to point out that sometimes the law doesn't go far enough, because literally none of those protesters were actually arrested for defacing the Sweeney's lawn. It's not like I think that Elix is wrong, but I also feel like executing somebody because they deface another's property is too extreme. Finally, the teacher changes the topic and instead asks about how the spaceships work, which is a super safe topic, especially in comparison to the crime and punishment topic. The bathroom passes a rhinestone bedazzled toilet seat designed to embarrass students and thus decrease requests to leave hung on a nail beside the door. Joke's on you, I have no shame. I routinely went to high school wearing a Naruto headband. Carrying a toilet seat is nothing in comparison to how much of a weeb that I was. As Kara starts to leave for the bathroom, Elix suggests that the security officer should go with her. Kara snaps at him that she's going down the hall to the toilet, not in another country, but Elix is worried about her and promises to come looking for her if she's not back in 5 minutes. Kara is only annoyed and randomly thinks that Elix had kissed her again that morning. But as she's walking down the hall, Kara sees some random girl shoving a note into her locker. She'd assumed up until right now that it was Marcus who had been leaving notes, but honestly, half of the school hates her and plenty of people probably know where her locker is. It wouldn't surprise me if the notes were from multiple sources. In fact, I'm surprised she doesn't find dozens of rude notes every time she goes to change out her books. Kara dashes forward, intending on using the toilet seat as a weapon, and is surprised that it's our dear Brandy with an eye. Brandy hadn't quite gotten the note into the locker, and she scrambles to try and pull it out before Kara can see it. This results in a physical fight, and yes, the toilet seat does come into play. Historical AU where everything is exactly the same, but instead of fighting with folding chairs in the WWE, they use toilet seats instead. However, when Kara finally bothers to ask, it kind of sounds like Brandy's in love with Elix and wanted to leave him a love letter. She didn't leave the threatening notes, which is like, yeah, did I call it or what? She continues on and says that Elix stopped responding to her text messages and she wants to hook up with him, but doesn't want Marcus or her mom to know because they're both anti-alien. Also worth remembering that Kara told the readers in an earlier chapter that Brandy and Marcus were an item, which, if you hate Marcus so much, why are you even with him? Kara almost felt sorry for Brandy. It must suck to crave popularity so bad that you'd be willing to hang on to a controlling boyfriend just to win a cheap tiara and an extra mention in the yearbook. Seriously, you're gonna date somebody that morally disgusts you simply so that you can become prom queen? Girl, get some freaking perspective. Brandy apologizes over the entire thing and tells Kara that she knows that Elix is into Kara. Kara sticks to the original lie that alien spit is acidic to humans, so nothing could actually happen anyway. She goes on and says that she and Elix cuddle a lot, which Brandy finds rather sad. She says that it would probably hurt when Kara goes to his planet only to watch Elix get to be with somebody he can touch. As Brandy leaves, Kara thinks about that future where Elix moves on past this and ends up with a member of his own species, and that hurts more than Brandy could possibly imagine. Later, Kara finds a threatening note in her locker, and accidents happen, especially on the stairs. Step on a crack, break your traitor back. How old are you? 5? Come on, who is going to take you seriously when your threatening letters sound like schoolyard taunts? Anyway, Kara says that the note hadn't been there earlier after Brandy had left and thinks that she should have stuck around to find out who was leaving them. But Blake makes a joke about Kara not tripping up the stairs to her next period, and it makes Kara feel a little better. As they go to the next class, there's a traffic jam by the stairs. Blake pushes his way through and comes back carrying Ashley in his arms. They time skip a little bit in which Kara has no new information about Ashley's condition after Blake brushed her off. Blake eventually calls and says that Ashley has multiple broken bones, and even though she's going to be fine, she won't be back to school for some time. Ashley says that somebody pushed her from the top of the stairs. He continues on and says that the school checked the security cameras, but they were conveniently turned off at the time that the note was left and Ashley pushed. Chapter 20. Sometime later, Kara is in a weird mood because she's now having R-rated dreams starring Elix. He had also been going out of his way to avoid her, and she often hears him in his room having loud arguments with his friends. She wishes that she could understand them because she knows that it's crucial to the plot. She tells her mom that she's going to school alone, but right outside the door are armed military officers who pointedly tell her that they'll drive them to school, both her and Elix together. Kara insists that she's going to walk to school, so she ends up having a shadow on her walk. She's simply grateful that he doesn't try to make small talk. Right before they get to the grounds, the soldiers hear us calling her not to go too far ahead because there's a huge halo protest at the school. Kara is surprised because the protest was supposed to be at City Hall, not the school. When they get to the school, there are more people there than Kara has ever seen in her life. There are also emergency crews, and she spots her dad tending to the school principal. She goes over to them where her dad tells her that the principal caught a beer bottle on the head. The principal asks her to sit down and tells her that since her father was tending to him, they had a discussion. He says that Elix and Kara should finish up the rest of the school year via homeschooling. He continues on and says that dozens of children are being pulled out from the school because it's not safe, which literally anybody could have told you that, moron. My problem with this is that the military and police force didn't start to make their presence known until after the angry mobs had already started angry mobbing. I feel like there was a lot that the principal should have done before things got to this point, and obviously there was a lot that the military and local police should have done before this point too. I'd also like to point out that Kara is being actively punished for something that was basically all the principal's idea. The entire point of the exchange is to convince the American public to be on the side of the aliens. If they're going to insist that Elix should hide away, then what's the point even? Kara naturally points out the hypocrisy over the entire thing. That students who should have been expelled a long time ago got free pass after free pass, but meanwhile the girl who was slated to become the next valedictorian is basically getting expelled, again for something that was all the principal's idea. Eventually Bill barks at her to go home, that it's not safe anymore, and I get that this is about safety, but Kara has a point. There's no reason for Elix or any of the aliens to be on Earth if they're going to hole up in one of the homes of their hosts doing independent study. Kara is handed off to Officer Blake, who escorts her aside, I guess to get the things from her locker. Inside there's yet another note from the same guy. Tori comes out from the bathroom, despite how first period had literally started a few minutes ago. Tori says that she's been trying to reach Kara, but Kara says that she has nothing to say to her, which is good, tell that jerk off. But then, despite the fact that Officer Blake was literally right there, Kara is kidnapped and forcefully dragged off. Officer Blake? Paging Officer Blake? The person who grabbed her is Eric, who tells her not to yell. They act like they're trying to help her, but honestly, the time for help was when Elix showed up. And even if they've been double agents this entire time, Kara is right to call them out on that nonsense. They could have found some way to tell her about this. Tori says that she's in office aid now and she turned the cameras off so that nobody would witness Eric kidnapping Kara, but the only thing Kara can think about is how somebody turned the cameras off right before Ashley was pushed down the stairs. They naturally deny having anything to do with that, but the problem with backstabbing jerks is that even if they do turn out to be doing the right stuff in the wrong way, is that now I don't believe anything that they have to say. Tori explains about how she went to those healing meetings and quickly realized that those people are mentally unwell. She bonded with Eric because of it, so they're not actually in a romantic relationship. But they warn her that these people are now trying to eliminate the alien's girlfriend, which Kara protests the use of that word, and that is literally not safe anymore. It was literally never safe. At literally any time, some psycho with a gun could have come and blown Kara's brains out on her walk to school. Need I remind you that today was the first day that the military bothered to show up? This entire time, Kara and Alex had been walking to school with no adult supervision whatsoever. And even if Alex had left that minute, the hate in those people's hearts would never be gone. They'd always view Kara as somebody who'd brought the scary beige aliens down to their planet. They'd probably try to murder Kara regardless of Alex's presence on Earth. Tori and Eric warn her not to leave her house, and that even walking the halls by herself is too dangerous. I am once again asking what the hell happened to Officer Blake. They both say that they have to get back to the class, so they leave. Kara goes back to her locker, but the note is mysteriously gone, as is her bag. She then decides that schoolwork isn't important in the face of everything, so she puts her books back into her locker and curses how the scholarship money was what lured her into this nonsense in the first place. Chapter 21. Kara goes out to find one of the soldiers there and asks him to take her home. He refuses until Alex is there. Alex comes out after a moment with her bag and he hugs her really hard. He seemed worried about her, which is fair considering that it seems as though he'd found her bag in the hall with obvious signs of a struggle. Why he didn't tell anybody that Kara had seemingly been abducted is beyond me, but whatever. However, Kara is having none of this and quickly calls him out. He goes on to say that when she didn't turn up at the office, everybody went looking for her. He claims that they tore the school apart trying to find her, but considering that she was in the school, I'm not sure that they did a good enough job. Although in Alex's defense, he says that he went to the stairs where they'd found Ashley. He says that he had to check there to make sure that Kara wasn't lying there with her neck broken. Again, Kara calls him out by saying that he's been blowing her off, and she's surprised that he cares. Kara then realizes that some of the soldiers are watching them, so she snaps at them that the show's over, even though she wants to continue chewing Alex out for his bad behavior. They go home where Alex pushes into her room. He starts saying some stuff, and it honestly sounds an awful lot like the start of a breakup speech, so I'm not surprised that Kara is quick to shut him down. He tells her that he wanted to put some distance between them until he was ready to tell her the truth, but after the incident today, he decided that he doesn't care. He starts to mac on her a little, and she pushes him away and tells him to start talking. He doesn't really know where to start, so he just starts to start with the cloning program. He tells her that in the beginning of his people's race, they weren't so different from humans from a purely psychological standpoint. He goes on to say that his people first started mucking around with selective breeding and then when they wanted to do artificial wombs. Basically, they wanted better, stronger, faster in every way possible. He asks Kara if she remembers the alien ambassador from the Leap Gala. Kara does, an old man who wasn't moving so well. Alex tells her that the man is only 50 years old, not 80, almost exactly as they predicted. In order to make their species better as a whole, they ended up somehow going backwards. In order to try and correct their breeding mistake, they switched over to using clones instead of the breeding program. And then the other shoe drops. The entire thing is literally so that they can breed some more life back into their species. They intentionally partnered up the aliens with the opposite gender to see what would happen. Alex is obviously a success, and they want more of what he's doing. But here comes the big betrayal. Except he doesn't tell her about the plan to sabotage the alliance with Earth and only focuses on the nanobots in the water that multiply the plant life. But Kara quickly realizes that there's more to what he's saying simply than we found a problem and we can fix it super quickly, because you don't emotionally push people away because of that. They then get into a tiny fight over how she can't read his mind in the same way his people can to know if he's telling the truth. Instead, he uses the primitive connection they have in order to share his feelings with her, since they can do that much. Kara is overwhelmed with his feelings, and she's more than a little surprised by them. She knows that it's lame to simply tell him, I love you, but she does it anyway because it's the only thing she's got. They make out for a little bit before he has to stop because things are getting a little too heated too quickly. They cuddle and Kara falls asleep in his arms, only to wake up to her father pounding on the door. Thanks for listening to my book Snark on YouTube. New videos are up every Monday, but stick around because I sometimes drop random videos on other days too. Just as a reminder, even if you can't financially support me, there are other ways to help me out. The first is watching this video as well as all my other videos. It's also important to like and subscribe. Finally, you can share this video with all of your friends so that they can help as well. If you're already caught up with all of my videos, you can go to Tumblr for my main book Snarks, always free and updated every morning. And if you've already read all of my main Snarks, then you can find even more Snark on my Patreon. You can access it for $1 a month. Members also get early access to my main Tumblr Snark. Special thanks to Dawn, Phoebe, and Nikki for supporting me on Patreon already. If you want to hear your name in my video next week, either support me on Patreon or make a one-time donation. Do you like my Snarks so much that you want me to Snark your writing? I do that too. For just $6 per chapter, I will tell you how awful that your writing is. But not to worry if you feel like you couldn't take the criticism. I also offer regular book editing as well, just 1 cent per word. You can contact me on any of my social media platforms if you have further questions. If you want to read some of the things that I've written, you can purchase my works on Amazon. I have a slew of erotic short stories and now 2 full-length novels. I also sometimes run flash sales on my stories, and if you don't follow me on any social media, you might want to do so just so you can know when I might be offering more things for free. Links for everything will be posted below. See you next week, guys!